Hello everybody, it's Nick here with Nick Tolman Music, and today we're going to go ahead and continue our beginner guitar lesson series using Mel Bay's Modern Guitar Method Grade 1. Alright, so today we're going to look at page 15. In our last lesson we learned some new notes on the 4th string. And today we're going to do one exercise where we combine those notes with the notes that we've learned previously. So at this point I think we've learned 11 notes. Starting on low D, we've learned D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Feel free to review those notes if you're still struggling to remember those. It's important that we master those notes before we get too far ahead of ourselves and add more concepts. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and look at this first exercise on page 15. It's called Cockles and Mussels. And some important things to note. First off, you'll notice that there is an accompaniment, so you'll see the chords up above. At this point, those are still just for the teacher, so I will play those for you in the video today so you can play along. But there's a couple other things. First off, we're in 3/4 time. We've talked about that before. If you haven't seen my video talking about the staff and time signatures, please check that out. It will help you to understand what 3/4 time means. But in short, that means that we're going to be having 3 beats in every measure. Also, if you'll notice that there is a pickup note going into the first measure. We talked about pickups in a previous lesson, but a pickup is just a note that happens before the first measure. Okay? So just be aware of that. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. We're going to start with the metronome at 72. Here's what the melody sounds like at that tempo. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Note. Half note. Alright, so that's a great melody. Now, as we add more and more notes, it's going to become more and more common that you might have some issues as you first start. That's okay. A couple ideas that you might utilize to help yourself as you practice this are: 1, make sure to start slow and work your way up. We've talked about that a lot. Something else you might work on is doing kind of an isolated approach. So for instance, if you consistently make a mistake in measure 2, when it changes strings from G to B, maybe spend some time just practicing that measure. Once you feel comfortable with that measure, maybe try adding the measure before and or the measure after. So here's the measure before and then that measure. So we have. Do that as many times as you need to. Once you feel pretty comfortable with that, maybe add the measure after. So we have. Right. The idea is that you isolate certain spots, you practice those things, and then you put it all back together. Now, something else that you might think about is that the most common thing that I see with students is that we always want to start at the beginning and work our way through that way. That's normal, right? We want to play a song from start to finish. But sometimes what happens is we get really comfortable with the beginning of a song, and then we begin to have more and more issues the further along we play. So sometimes it's a good idea to maybe practice starting toward the end. Maybe you start and you just practice that fourth line. And really work that until you have it down, and then add the third line and play the third and fourth line, third and fourth line, third and fourth line. Drill that as many times as you need to. Kind of focusing toward the end of the song that sometimes gets neglected when we always start at the beginning. Those are just some ideas that you might use to practice to become more familiar and more comfortable with this exercise. Let's go ahead and play the exercise with a faster tempo. Here's 120. Again, you're probably not going to jump straight from 72 to 120. You're going to work your way up slowly, adding a few clicks every time you play it until you can play it at a faster tempo. Here we go, at 120. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 120 is certainly not the limit. If you get it down at 120, feel free to go faster. The faster you can play it, probably the better as far as being able to develop your finger capacity. So let's go ahead and try it. I will play the accompaniment, so I will play the chords for you at 72 as well as at 120. That way you can play along. So here it is at 72. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Let's go ahead and try it at a faster tempo. Feel free to rewind and play through it as many times as you want at that tempo. But here it is. Here's the accompaniment at 120. Feel free to play along. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Nice job. So let's go ahead and take a look at the second half of this page. We're going to learn an important new concept, which is eighth notes. Again, if you have not seen my video on different types of notes and their values, please check it out. I discuss eighth notes in that video and explain it, but we'll talk about it a little bit more today in this lesson as well. So as a reminder, an eighth note is equal to a half of a beat. So we have a whole note that gets 4 beats, a half note that gets 2 beats, a quarter note gets 1 beat, and an eighth note gets a half of a beat in most cases. There are times when that might change, but basically anytime there's a 4 as the bottom number of the time signature, that eighth note is always going to get half of a beat. So go ahead and take a look there in the middle of the page, and you'll notice that it gives you some visuals as far as what an eighth note looks like. But it also talks about eighth rests and what they look like. Now, you'll notice that eighth notes have two different appearances. If you have a single eighth note all by itself, you'll notice that it looks just like a quarter note but with a flag on it. If you have multiple eighth notes right next to each other, they might be connected by a bar. And if you see it connected like that with a single bar connecting the two stems, you'll know that those are eighth notes. When we talk about eighth rests, the visual that you see there is the only way an eighth rest will ever look. If you were going to have multiple eighth rests near each other, you would just use a quarter rest or a half rest or whatever. We don't bar the rests together. When we talk about eighth notes, again, an eighth note is worth half of a beat. And it's important to know how to count that. There's an important concept that we use as musicians called subdividing. Subdividing is the ability to divide the beat in your head to help you keep track of smaller note values. There are different ways to subdivide depending on what type of note value you might be dealing with, but when we subdivide eighth notes, the way I like to do it is I think ands in between each beat. So if our beat is here at 72, the beat is just 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I were to play right along with that beat, I'd be playing quarter notes. So I need to divide that beat in half. I'm going to use the word and to help me subdivide. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So the numbers, the big beats, are still in the same place. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. This tool will help me to know how fast an eighth note should be. So if I had multiple eighth notes all lined up next to each other, they would just fall right along with that subdivided beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Those are eighth notes. So let's go ahead and take a look at exercise number 1 on the second half of the page under eighth note studies. This is also the first exercise that we are going to utilize an upstroke on our pick. So up to this point we've been doing all down picks. Okay? Now we're going to use an upstroke as well. Okay? The key to this is starting out slow and building your way back up. You've probably gotten really comfortable picking down. Now it's just a matter of starting to do some practice picking up. For these exercises, I would like you to pay attention to those strokes and follow them the way that they have been written to follow. So looking at number 1, we have 2 quarter notes that are both picked down, and then we have 4 eighth notes that are going down, up, down, up. Okay, so it would be quarter, quarter, eighth, 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 eighth. Now if I was going to count that, using the subdivision method that I used a minute ago, it would sound something like this. This is just the first measure of exercise 1. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Quarter, quarter, eighth, 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 eighth. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. It's going to sound something like this. That next measure, we have a quarter, and then 2 eighths, and a quarter, and a quarter rest. So that's going to sound something like this if I were to count it. 1, 2, and 3, rest. 1, 2, and 3, rest. Rest. That's what it sounds like. Next measure, 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Now you notice that the last two notes of that, they're not actually marked how you should stroke. At this point, when we're starting to use down, up strokes, you're going to make decisions that feel the most comfortable to you and make the most sense. Okay? So you could play both of those down, that would be fine, or you could play both of those quarter notes up or down as a down, up. Either way, it would make sense to play at least that first quarter note down because the note you picked previously was up, right? So let's go ahead and we'll try that one more time. Third measure of exercise 1. And the last measure of exercise 1 would be 1, 2 and half note. 1, 2 and half note. Alright, so here's what exercise 1 would sound like at 72 on the metronome. Alright, let's take a look at exercise 2. Very similar exercise using just quarter notes and eighth notes. Here's what it would sound like at 72. Here we go. 1, 2, ready and play. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, rest. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4, off. One more time. Exercise 3, here we go. 1, 2, ready and play. Note. Half note off. Here's exercise 4. 1 and 2 and ready and play. Exercise 5 gets a little tricky because it's going to incorporate some eighth rests. But just remember, an eighth rest, you're going to count it just like an eighth note. You're just not going to play that note. It's a short rest. It's worth half of a beat. Here's exercise 5. I'll count it first and then I'll play it. So here we go. 1 and 2, rest, 3, 4, and 1 and 2, rest, 3, 4. 1 and 2, rest, 3, 4, and 1 and 2, rest, half note. Alright, so that might be like, whoa, that's crazy. It's just those little rests, okay? If you pretended that rest was a note, that first measure would just be 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and, right? But since there's a rest, it's just 1 and 2, rest, 3, 4, and 1 and 2, rest, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 1 and 2, rest, 3, 4, off. Here's what it sounds like. Here we go. 1, 2, ready and play. So you probably noticed I was trying to accentuate those rests and make sure that I'm not letting sound continue on. To do so, you actually have to kind of stop the sound from happening. There's multiple ways that can happen, right? So if I'm holding a note here like an open string, to stop that sound, I either need to touch the string with my left hand or with my right hand. And depending on the music, it just depends, right? So in most of the cases in this song, I'm going to use my left hand to stop that sound. In the first measure, it makes sense because I'm going to play an E with my second finger right after that rest. So I just place my finger right on that rest to kill the sound. Now that one, I also just use that second finger to just kill the sound real quick and then lift it right back off. Now that one, I'm playing an A to start. So to kill the sound, I'm just kind of just letting off instead of holding that down. Right? That's the idea. Exercise 6. Here we go. Still at 72. 1, 2, 3, 1. Ready and play. 1, 2, 3. Half note rest. Nice. This one might be tricky, and that's okay. Feel free to take it slower. Start slow. Make sure you are subdividing, counting in your head. Every time you see those eighth notes, you're thinking 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. They're twice as fast as a quarter note. Really quickly, I'm going to play through all of these exercises for you at a faster tempo so you can hear them straight down. Eighth note studies, exercise 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. Here's exercise 2. 1, 2, ready, play. Half note off. And exercise 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Half note. Half note off. Exercise 4. Exercise 5. 1, 2, ready, play. And exercise 6. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, play. 1, 2, 3. So those are your exercises for page 15. Again, we learned eighth notes today. That's a big deal. So spend some serious time on these eighth note studies and make sure that you're really grasping that concept. If you're having struggles, please feel free to leave me a comment and ask for more direction. I'd be more than happy to get back to you and help you out however I can. Thanks for tuning in today. Please subscribe. If you enjoyed today's content, please check out my Patreon page, and we'll catch you next time.